What's going on, Badger Nation? Welcome to the PPC Den podcast, the world's first and longest running show all about how to make your Amazon advertising life a little bit easier and a little bit more profitable. Today on the show, we have the one and only Joe Shelerud from AdVance coming back on the show. And we have a great topic, which is going to be your first step into Amazon Marketing Cloud. We've got a really nice example, and I'm actually going to pull it up here in the preview of this episode so you can actually begin to poke around and actually see what it's like inside Amazon Marketing Cloud. We have a really cool example audience that you can, with a couple of clicks, tap into. It's going to look a little bit like this, which is inside your sponsored products, right next to like you'd bid more for top of search. Over here, you can bid more individual audiences inside Amazon Marketing Cloud, and you can create these without touching a line of code. With all that said, let's jump into the episode. Have a good one. Joe from AdVance, thanks so much for coming back into the Badger Den. It's great to have you here.
It's awesome to be here, Michael.
So I'd love to just touch in. It's been a little bit of time since we've talked. How are things going at your agency, AdVance?
It's been going really good. Yeah, I mean, just so super brief overview who people who don't know me or us. So we're at AdVance. I got my start in the Amazon ecosystem about a decade ago, actually as a seller. And long story short, we built a bunch of software and tech. That's kind of what we're known for, but then being able to scale it on the agency side. So yeah, things are going good. And I am located just like directly north, like a long ways from Michael if you take I-35 straight up to where it ends in Duluth, Minnesota. So you may hear my almost Canadian accent.
Yes, almost Canadian. I hope I hear, don't you know, at least once or twice while as we record here.
Yeah. A few you betchas, or I'm trying to think of the other stereotypical types.
Yes, but I-35 just runs up the middle of America from south to north. And I guess one interesting thing to, before we get into the meat of the episode, I think there's a lot of agencies that listen to the show or a lot of freelancers that listen to the show. Do you have any words of wisdom for them? Like, how does one create a great agency? What is your perspective on it?
I think you've got to find your unique niche and what you're really good at. So for us, we've always been known for digging really deep into the data. I'm an engineer by training, and so that's just kind of came naturally for me and my co-founder. He's a financial analyst. And so really being deep in the data has worked really well for us. And we built the agency kind of around that perspective where to dig really deep, we need to develop our own software, our own tools. We need to be first to market for a lot of these new features that come in. And so I think at the core of it for an agency is, all right, what is the key thing that's going to set you apart longer term? And it's got to be more specific than just I'm going to give better service or I'm going to know more than the competitors. And so I think the key thing is really finding that niche, and then everything that you do going forward should be based around it.
And what about for the sellers out there? Like, I've often thought, because, I hire agencies myself to do various things. I hire freelancers to do various things as we all do. And sometimes I often catch myself, I'm being, if they're my vendor and like I'm their, person I'm the one who's doing the hiring. I sometimes find myself reflecting like, I could have asked this differently, or I could have managed them differently.
Sure.
And, I'm a big fan of brands advocating for their needs and being clear about their needs, meaning like, sometimes I've had this experience. I've been on the receiving end of these calls like, it feels like my agency like isn't giving me what I need. And like sometimes my reaction is like, well, have you expressed like what it is that you need? It's really tricky to get those needs met if they haven't been explicit. So I get that a lot when I'm working with people that I hire, where it's like, I forgot to mention like this thing is super important to me. And I didn't realize that until you sent me the first report. So can you begin to add this on future reports? Like simple things like that. What about your very best clients that you work with? Is there something that they do to help you produce your best work?
I think our best clients, they are very straightforward with their expectations from the start. And like you said, it's kind of hard to get that framed up from the start sometimes. And so What I've found, because I've been in that spot too, or like when we hire for the agency, like I want to give my expectations very clearly from the start. And so the best way that I found is putting it actually down on paper and thinking through it ahead of time. And I've got different bullets that I can go through on that call to make sure that, one, my expectations on what I'm going to get are very clear. The last thing you want to do is like not be very explicit on exactly the level of detail or the level of support that you want, because you want the relationship to work. I mean, that's kind of setting yourself up for a disaster longer term. And so I think the more that you can frame up your thoughts ahead of time on here's exactly what I'm looking for. And then the other key piece of advice I would give is they should be able to show you that they're going to be able to meet those expectations versus just talk through them. And so I've had the experience of talking with a lot of different sellers, and we have those same conversations like, I'm not getting this from my existing agency, or they promised a lot going into this and now it's not delivering. And so I think probably the biggest thing is like, they should be able to show you what they've done for other people just like you, or they should be able to show you specific strategies and an action plan that they're going to implement going into it. If it's more just generalness on what they're going to bring, I would be skeptical.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for that. I know that a lot of sellers and agencies sitting on opposite sides of the table listen to the show. And I feel like a lot of times maybe there's a service out there for brands to almost be like a agency advocate, and not the vice versa for agencies to have like a brand advocate to just sort of be sure that everyone's talking on the same page and everyone has those shared expectations. And you mentioned something really simple that is so incredibly powerful, which is just like, has these things been written down? Right. So it's like, how much do we want to spend every month? That's written down so there's no surprises. Like, what do we think the target ROAS should be that is achievable in a certain time frame? Be sure that gets written down. That way there's no sort of surprises like, oh, hey, we increased the ROAS 35%, but the client was expecting a 75% increase in ROAS or something like that. So it's always good to be explicit about all those things. Well, anyway, Joe, it's one of my favorite topics. I love sort of talking about that.
Yeah, it's a crazy landscape too for anybody in the space. Now, there's so many different options, which are awesome. But sometimes with that variety of options, it gets really hard to choose.
I think it was on Reddit. There's a subreddit r/agency. And somebody asked a question like, hey, I'm 50 years old. Should I start an agency? And there were some people in there that like, oh man, you're going to like have a heart attack. It's too stressful. And other people were like, I'm 53 and I've ran an agency for the last 15 years. And it's like, it could be very tumultuous. But anyway, let's jump in to the acronym that's been on a lot of Amazon sellers and marketers' minds, which is of course, not the movie theater, not the meme stock, AMC, Amazon Marketing Cloud. And today I think we're going to do something cool. You had a really cool idea, which is sort of like, what are the first entry points into Amazon Marketing Cloud? Like, what are the first audiences that you can tap into? And in case anyone is unfamiliar, let's just break down for a moment. Number one, what is a marketing audience? And number two, why are they in Amazon Marketing Cloud?
I'll even take it one step back further, just because I think there's a lot of misconceptions or misunderstandings on Amazon Marketing Cloud and what it is. The easiest way that I have to think about this is Amazon Marketing Cloud is just kind of this big database that's pulling data in from a lot of sources. And what's cool with Amazon Marketing Cloud is you can get these reports or generate these audiences, which kind of tie all this data in from different sources. And so it's pulling all this raw information from sponsored ads in the ad console, or from Amazon's DSP, or Amazon attribution if you're running links off to other sources, or other data sources that you can input, or you can track with like pixels and bring that data in if you're running ads on your website. The best way to think about AMC is it is just this accumulation of all this information from different sources. And then it will give you either reports on that you can, we call it query, but it's just a fancy way of saying requesting a report or some data. or you can generate these different marketing audiences. And so going to your question on the audience side, with these audiences, with AMC, one powerful way that you can use it is you can kind of filter people who have taken different actions on Amazon.com. We'll go with that as the easiest example. And so, for instance, I can create an audience that has added my product to their cart. And then there's things that I can do with that audience after it. I can create an audience that has viewed my product detail page. And then there's things that I can do with that one. I can create a lookalike audience, which I define what I'm looking for. So we'll do an easy example where I'm going to take everybody who purchased from me over the last year, and I want to find other people who look like my previous purchasers. And Amazon has algorithms to do that. And then there's things that I can do with that. And so on the audience side, what AMC allows us to do is just tie together the data from these different sources and then be able to filter out people who have taken certain actions or look like other people that I want to specify. And in this instance, I would be like purchases would be an easy example.
I think that the engineering architecture of Amazon necessitated having something like this, meaning this data has always existed, right? It's just been stored somewhere on Amazon's servers somewhere. And instead of putting it into, sponsored products reports or inside the sponsored ads area, they created a new area where they can just dump a lot of stuff and sort of leave it to, and instead of creating, and now there are some quite user-friendly things, which we'll share our screen in a little bit and share. But for the most part, it just allows them to basically only set up the back end and be like, somebody else come and get the data how you want it. Like, we don't know what you want, so you can just request anything, which has its pros and cons, right? So there are some common audiences that we can look at once you get into Amazon Marketing Cloud. But for the most part, yeah, it's just raw data sitting there. And the way to interact with it isn't like a user interface for the most part. It's just you type in a SQL query, which isn't too overwhelming, to be honest, if you know how to navigate. Maybe I'll do an episode on creating queries in the future, but it's not too scary, especially with all of the AI help, which knows SQL incredibly well. And with all that being said, this concept of a marketing audience has always been around. I would say it's been very prominent on outside platforms, and it's sort of relatively new to the sponsored ads arena inside sponsored products, right? Everyone loves sponsored products. It is the biggest and I would say one of the best e-commerce ads on the internet, very deep in the funnel. It looks like a normal organic listing. So it mirrors that format. People click on it, often are unaware that it's actually a sponsored ad, which people love. Looks tremendously different than someone scrolling on Instagram. Obviously, that's an ad. They have to click on that and figure out what you're all about. You're interrupting them. But if you are selling, water bottles and stainless steel water bottles, and you've just bid on that keyword, it's one of the best ways to get in front of people who are actively searching for that. And historically, there wasn't really a way to bolt on audiences to that, which is, okay, what if I did sponsored product ads and then also attach an audience? And, so I think like you start to get all these different variables stacked on itself, and audiences and behavior-based audiences, like you mentioned, which is they've done something or they didn't do something, or they've done something and not that other thing. You can start to really get your gears turning with different levels of targeting and how you want to serve these ads. So I think it's a really exciting time, especially because Amazon Marketing Cloud is becoming more and more available. You can punch into it. They have some no-code out-of-the-box things, which we'll look at. And I think that I said this before about like bulk files, where it's like people shouldn't be afraid of bulk files. It's not that intimidating. There's like simple things that you can do inside bulk files that make it really easy over there. And I would say the same thing about Amazon Marketing Cloud. Like you don't need to be too overwhelmed with Amazon Marketing Cloud. I think you can get value from it by just having an AMC instance and just clicking on the no code options. And when it comes to audience-based marketing, I want, even before we get into what the interface looks like or what these audiences could be and what the potential is for them. As a marketer, as a general digital marketer who maybe has only done keyword-based targeting or product targeting, where it's like, I want to bid on this keyword or I want to bid on that product. Adding another layer like audiences is a really interesting step forward. And I don't want to downplay it. It actually is quite significant. So talk to, just in terms of like marketing strategy. I think a lot of people think about marketing strategy like I have my branded keywords, my competitor branded keywords. I have brand defense keywords. I have, brand conquest. I'm trying to go after my competitors. I have generic keywords. I have head keywords. I have long tail keywords. I have all these different kinds of keywords, right? We live in a very keyword based world. And historically, Amazon has not really been an audience based marketing platform for a lot of advertisers. This might be their first exposure to audience-based marketing. So like, where do you merge all these things together? Like, how do you rank? How do you prioritize these things inside a typical seller's worldview?
Yeah. So if I look at the overall ad spend, typical ad spend breakdown, sponsored products typically is 70 to 80% of overall spend. So it's a huge driver in terms of spend. It's a huge driver in terms of budget. It's a huge driver in terms of sales. And so just going through the history of sponsored products a bit, like when I started, you couldn't even specifically product target. So it was all just within auto campaigns. Then negatives rolled along, and that was a big update because it's like, okay, we can kind of control what keywords we're showing for. Fast forward, they give us placement adjustments where now I can bid a little bit more to get like a top of search placement versus showing up on the product page or rest of search. And that was a big deal. But our two key targeting methods up to this point is keywords. So anybody who types in the search term that matches up with my keyword, or their own specific products that I am targeting. What's so cool and so powerful with this update is now I can add this extra layer, which is this audience on top of it. And so if I can layer in, say, somebody who typed in a keyword, along with somebody who's taken a certain action. So say they've already viewed my product page. I can stitch those two together, and we've seen that these ads perform significantly better when these different audiences are layered in. And so the key thing that this allows you to do is, one, you can expand the keywords that you're targeting. So for instance, say I'm selling a golf launch monitor. So, I set up where I practice my golf swing, and you can see the flight of the ball and everything else like that. So golf launch monitor would definitely be a keyword that I can target. But now with this additional audience filtering, I can expand that quite a bit. So whereas before I could never target the keyword golf because it's just way too broad. Anybody who types in golf, that could be looking for golf balls or golf clubs or golf shirts or golf shoes or just browsing around because they're interested in golf itself. But now I could target the keyword golf if I have the right audience attached. Because if I have the right audience attached, I can show my ad to somebody who is, say, either added my product to their cart, or they've already looked at my products, so they're already very familiar with my brand, or they look like my previous purchasers, or say you have like a supplement brand and people come back and they purchase again and again and again. You can create a lookalike audience based off of your highest value customers and then be able to bid more for those folks who come down. And so this extra layer of filtering that you can have for sponsored ads is a huge update. Where it just really expands how you can look at the ad type itself. And I agree. I feel like this is one of the best performing ads on the internet. It's on the biggest e-commerce platform, and it shows up when people are searching directly for products, and they're usually very close to the purchase at that point. And so the more targeted that we can get with this, it can have a huge impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Described incredibly well. Because you previously just had keywords, right? Everyone's searching the word golf. You would treat the exact same way. And now you can say, well, some of these people that search golf who have already been exposed to me, I want to target. And you get like multiple levels of behavior that are sort of marching towards an eventual purchase for you. Number one, they're still searching on Amazon. They didn't find what they wanted. And retargeting and sort of interaction with your brand is really, the holy grail of Amazon, of just e-commerce marketing in general, right? Like everyone loves retargeting ads. They're often the very best performing. And when you can stack that with someone's also making a search, or just your normal sponsored products already with the best e-commerce ad type, you hit them with an audience, it's usually quite good. A couple different things that I'll say too is, it's not my favorite system, meaning, when Amazon does something, they do it a particular way, meaning like you cannot downbid on product pages. You cannot downbid on top of search if you need to. And you cannot create these sort of like negative audiences that you want to decrease bids on, for example. So that's just one caveat to think about as you go through. So you're often looking for audiences that you would want to pay extra for. And generally the easiest thing that you don't want to pay extra for is like someone who's, deep in the funnel. If you consider a deep of funnel keyword, stacking it with a deep of funnel audience, like takes them even deeper into the funnel, right? They're closer and closer to that purchase event. I guess one hesitation that people might have is like, if somebody added it to cart, they didn't purchase, why would I want to spend even more money going after them? Maybe someone's never ran a retargeting sponsored product campaign before. What's the point of spending more money on someone who's like, why is retargeting so good?
So there's two major ways that we can retarget with Amazon ads. And so one is this method that we'll circle back to. And the other one is either through your sponsored display or Amazon DSP.
Right.
Which
have been around for some time.
Exactly. Yep. And so sponsored display has given us a good taste into targeting audiences within Amazon. Amazon's DSP allows us to stack a lot of different audiences together and become much more filtered, which is why we typically go that route. The biggest issue with retargeting as a strategy is that you could be essentially cannibalizing different traffic that would have converted already. And so you're wasting more ad dollars for that person who would have purchased already. If we look at the typical placements for like sponsored display or DSP retargeting, they're usually going to be display ads. Like they could show up below the buy box or below the bullet points on the product detail page or throughout the web. And we do a lot of off Amazon targeting. One caveat when you're looking at the results from retargeting is you're probably taking credit for some sales that would have happened already.
Tale as old as time.
Exactly. And so it's all, we could spend multiple episodes talking about incrementality and what is the true impact of my ads with these different strategies and attribution windows and all that good stuff. The beauty with using more of like a retargeting strategy with sponsored products is I can also control the keywords that I show for. Somebody is in a buying state of mind because they're searching for something on Amazon. And if you're searching for something on Amazon, you're either browsing a product or getting ready to buy a product. I can control the keywords that I target along with this like add to cart view based audience. And so where it gets really fun is I can take all these very general keywords where it's like, hey, they're browsing around, but they're not specifically looking for my product right now. But this is a great way to remind them about my product that they either added to my cart or they've already viewed previously. And so if we take the golf example, if I'm targeting the keyword golf and then they see my ad and they click it and they purchase, I can make a decent case that, hey, they might not have purchased that product without seeing my ad again as a reminder. If I was targeting golf launch monitor and I retargeted them, like, okay, I don't have as strong of a case they might purchase already because that's directly on their mind. But if I'm targeting these very broad keywords, but then layering in this retargeting audience, I think I have a much stronger case that I'm not cannibalizing a lot of sales that would have happened because they're searching so broad. They're not searching specifically for my product. So that's where I think there's a lot of power in these different audiences. As you go further up the funnel and get into like lookalikes or new to brand, there's a whole different way that you can utilize these. But like the retargeting ones seem to be very powerful. And that's been a fun one that we can have, especially targeting these broader keywords.
Yeah. I've been doing this a long time across multiple channels. And I can't think of a single e-commerce brand that doesn't have their highest ROAS in some kind of retargeting, right? It's so retargeting is generally incredibly worth it. And let's actually, because it's possible that people have never seen Amazon Marketing Cloud. And I'm going to share my screen here. All right, so when you actually go over to Amazon Marketing Cloud inside Amazon, you're able to see these instructional queries. And it's actually kind of cool because every single one that we're looking at here is tagged no code. So basically what that means, Amazon has already written the query for us to use. And right here, I'd probably, my favorite one, my first one would probably be this one, deep in the funnel: audience that added to cart but did not purchase. Build an audience that added any one or more ASINs to cart. So you can do specific ASIN targeting here as well. So like they clicked on this one, they added it to cart, but they didn't purchase that one, or you can do all of your products. So out of the 6 that are presented to me here, this is probably the one that's most exciting to me. My first AMC audience, I would say, your first AMC audience for the people out there. What else do they present us here as their sort of starter instructional queries?
Yeah, I mean, we love to like stack different audiences. So if they've been exposed to different ads like higher up the funnel,
Right.
now we can bid more to show them ads on the sponsored side. So it's like the audience exposed to Amazon DSP campaigns. That's another fun one.
Right, that's like ad retargeting, right? Like they interacted with an ad way up top in the funnel. So maybe you hit them with a cold audience, a completely cold audience, or a lookalike audience up top. And then you're like getting those people, hey, if they engage. This is a very common thing that you see on like social ads, where you have like a hyper top of funnel ad, like, from an influencer or somebody using the product that's not too salesy. And then everyone who engages with that video, you then retarget.
Yep.
Classic.
Yeah. And that's where it gets fun. Like there's like the optimal frequency here. So you can kind of layer that on. And if you look at that, like the average person completely new to brand needs to see an ad 6 to 8 times. And so you can start to string this whole storyline together from top to bottom and stack everything. And now with these audiences on the sponsored side, on the very like bottom of funnel side, give us a really nice way to be able to layer everything together.
Big time. Yeah. I mean, people getting to know your brand over time, having multiple interactions with it is just good, right? Like I've seen things before where like one of the people who market for Mercedes-Benz is like, my marketing starts when your baby's born. Or like Disney has said things like that, yes, kids are our number one demographic, but we're really marketing to them as kids so that when their parents are taking their kids and the cycle continues. So like multiple touch points. I have people that listen to this show for years and then like finally send an email. They're like, hey, like, can you tell me more about this? And then like become a customer after years, right? So multiple touch points is a thing in marketing that is just human nature for sure. So if you click on audience that added to cart but did not purchase, you end up here. This is their instructional query. Now, they've framed it up for you quite nicely, and you can actually click and see the code perspective here on the SQL side. But the template, they just have a really simple, easy to fill out form for you. You pick your brand. You can create a rule-based audience or a look-like audience right from here. You give it a name. Do you want it to continue rolling forward, meaning like every day it's going to look at the last 30 days of people who added to cart but didn't purchase? Or do you want it for some fixed time frame? Use case there might be maybe you're running a promotion and you just want to like double tap the people that just run that promotion or saw that promotion during that week. What other use case would be to not roll the date forward?
I think to not roll the date, it's over like a specific period. So say
Right.
we ran a big promotion for Black Friday, or we've done like Amazon homepage takeovers and you want to stack different audiences based off of different time frames with different types of ads after. Yeah. So it's more event based. And for the majority, it's going to be a rolling audience.
And then I get to pick whether I want to do the sort of retargeting for one ASIN or all of my ASINs, leave blank for all ASINs. So it's as simple as that. You go in and within a couple of minutes, you have a list. When I did this on previously, it gave me a list of 7,000 people that added to cart that didn't buy, which I think is amazing. Now, what's extra cool is you can then take this audience and just go create a new sponsored product campaign. And there will be a little button there waiting for you. Increase bids on a custom audience created in Amazon Marketing Cloud. And then you just get to pick from your list of audiences and give it a bid increase. And that's as simple as that. In terms of like, is this an overwhelming process? I would say resoundingly no. This is really, really simple to create and go forth. This is such a safe bet, right? It's just giving you another dimension to target of people who have added to cart but did not purchase. And to your point, yeah, I can see, to be a little aspirational here. So obviously, I think this is a really good starting point. But to be aspirational, like, what else could you stack here? Do you think, like, because you can, create truly custom audiences. I can do a per product. So maybe I can do a certain product and then hit them with, maybe an alternative product. That's a common marketing thing where somebody, they saw your first offer, they didn't buy it. So maybe they were missing something. So maybe you serve them the cheaper, lower price product as an easier entry point. That's something. Maybe you have two colors. They looked at the white one. You're going to serve them an ad for the black one. So a common thing in marketing is like, oh, if I get a second chance, I'm going to hit them with a different perspective of why they should purchase, not necessarily the same thing sometimes. What other ideas come up for you? What other experiments have you been playing with?
Yeah, I mean, so if you like on the aspirational side, some really fun cases where you tie in a bunch of AMC is, say, we'll focus on like a supplement brand that has repeat purchases. So I can start very upper funnel, and all right, I had to fill my funnel with new people who are not specifically searching for my product, but look like other people who maybe I can stack in demos, I can stack in market lifestyle. I can find these folks, and then I can use AMC reports to figure out who is my cheapest cost per acquisition for a new to brand customer. I can also use AMC reports to figure out what is going to be my most valuable product, my most valuable gateway product to get them in.
Yes.
Where they lead to the highest lifetime value. And then from there, I can stack in this whole layer from top of funnel down to bottom of funnel. I can optimize every section of the funnel. And then once they purchase, now how to derive repeat purchases and loyalty and cross purchases. There's a lot of ways that you can tie all these together. What we talked about is a great way to get introduced into utilizing audiences within sponsored ads and specifically sponsored products, which is going to have the biggest impact. But then what gets fun is we find these specific strategies that work. Now it's like, how do I add more people to fall into that strategy? Right. And so you go a little bit further up the funnel and you layer all these together. So AMC provides all the reports, all the data, all the tools, layer that with Amazon's DSP and sponsored ads. You have a very powerful combination.
Amazon marketers have never really had to like create funnels, like customer acquisition maps, where it's like you have all this stuff visually written out, where it's like, okay, they're going to interact with this one, and then those people that do interact with that, they're going to move over here. If they buy this, they're going to go in that bucket or this bucket. And it's really a cool time to play around with all these audiences. And the fact that you can access some of them right out of the box, relatively simple, took a couple clicks in order to get that retargeting based audience inside a sponsored product campaign. It takes minutes. Is a really cool time.
Yeah. And I think it also, like starting as an Amazon seller, we become so keyword and product targeting focused that this really opens your mind too, where it's like, okay, if I can find the right people who have either taken an action or really resemble my other customers, they fit my customer avatar really well, and then I can layer on these other actions that they can take. It expands your thought process on like what's possible. And then, all right, so this audience worked really well within sponsored products. How do I also target that audience off of Amazon? And there's a lot of ways you can do that. And there's pros and cons with doing that. But I think this is really good too, because it just expands how you can think through the full marketing strategy for your brands. And your
Very well said. Well, Joe, let's leave it there for the good people out there in Badger Nation. Someone wanted to follow up with you, maybe ask you some questions. Where can the good people out there get in touch with you?
Yeah, head on over to adadvance.com or follow me or Maria, my team, on LinkedIn is another great spot to connect. So come over there. We've got lots of great info, and we'd love to chat.
Awesome, Joe. Thanks so much. Everyone else, I'll see you next week here on the PPC Den podcast.
I've launched campaigns and picked keywords. I've got my bits, set placements too. and bad mistakes.